going on to the Heartlocks tonight, Olivia?
I suppose so. Are you?
Yes, horribly tedious parties they have, don't they?
Horribly tedious. Never know why I go. Never know why I go anywhere.
I go to get educated.
Oh, I hate being educated.
So do I. It puts one almost on the same level with commercial classes, doesn't it? But dear Gertrude Chiltern is always telling me that I should find some serious purpose in life. So I come here to try to find one.
Well, I don't see anybody here tonight whom one could possibly call a serious purpose. The man who took me to dinner talked to me about his wife the whole time.
How very trivial of him!
Terribly trivial. What did your man talk about?
About myself.
And were you interested?
Not in the smallest degree.
What Margaret's where, dear Margaret?
Yes, and what's he become of us, Olivia? Hello, Lily. Did you hear the latest news that Lady Belton eloped with Lord Featherstone?
Oh yes, I heard that. Really, I think to elope is quite cowardly. It is running away from danger, and danger has become so rare in modern life.
As far as I can make out, the young women of the present day seem to make it the sole object of their lives to be always playing with fire.
The one advantage of playing with fire, Lady Basildon, is that one does not even get singed. It is the people who don't know how to play with it who gets burned.
Yes, that's very, very helpful.
I don't know how the world will get on such a theory as that, dear Mrs. Allenby.
Well, the world was made for men and not for women.
Don't say that. We have a much better time than they have. Besides, there are far more things forbidden to us than are forbidden to them.
I never thought of that.
Good evening, Lady Chiltern. Has my good-for-nothing son been here?
I don't think Lord Goring has arrived yet.
Why do you call Lord Goring good for nothing?
Why? Because you lead such an idle life.
How can you say such a thing? Why, he rides in the row at 10 o'clock in the morning, goes to the opera 3 times a week, changes his clothes at least 5 times a day, and he dines out every night of the season. You don't call that living an idle life, do you?
Why, you are a very charming young lady.
How sweet of you to say that, Lord Caversham. Do come to us more often. You know we are always at home on Wednesdays, and you look so good in your tux.
Thank you, dear. But I never go anywhere now. I'm sick of London society. You know, I shouldn't mind being introduced to my own tailor. He always votes on the right side like I do. But I object strongly to being sent down to dinner with my wife's milliner. I never could stand Lady Caversham's bonnets.
Oh, I love London society. I think it has immensely improved. It is entirely composed now of beautiful idiots and brilliant lunatics. Just what society should be.
And which is Lord Goring? A beautiful idiot or the other thing?
I have been obliged at present to put Lord Goring into a class quite by himself, but he's developing charmingly.
Into what?
I hope to let you know very soon, Lord Caversham.
Good evening, dear Gertrude. So kind of you to let me bring my friend Mrs. Cheverly. 2 such charming women should know each other.
I think Mrs. Cheverly and I have met before. I did not know she had married a second time.
Oh, it is most fashionable to marry as many times as one can, isn't it? Oh, dear Countess. And how's the Count? Brain's still weak, I suppose.
But have we really met before, Lady Chiltern? I can't remember where. I've been out of England for so long.
We were at school together, Mrs. Cheverly.
Indeed. I have forgotten all about my school days. I have the vague impression they were detestable.
I am not surprised.
Do you know, I'm quite looking forward to meeting your clever husband, Lady Chiltern. Since he's been at the Foreign Office, he's been so much talked of in Vienna. They actually succeed in spelling his name right in the newspapers. That in itself is fame on the continent.
Mrs. Cheverly, I hardly think there will be much in common between you and my husband.
Ah, cher madame, what a surprise. I have not seen you since Berlin.
Not since Berlin, Vicomte. 5 years ago.
And you are younger and more beautiful than ever. How do you manage it?
By making it a rule only to talk to perfectly charming people like yourself.
Ah, you flatter me. You butter me, as they say here.
Do they say that here? How dreadful of them.
Yes, they have a wonderful language. It should be more widely known.
Good evening, Lady Markby. I hope you brought Sir John with you.
Oh, I have brought a much more charming person than Sir John. Sir John's temper. since he has taken seriously to politics, has become quite unbearable. Really, now that the House of Commons is trying to become useful, it does a great deal of harm.
I hope not, Lady Markby. At any rate, we do our best to waste the public time, don't we? But who is this charming person you've been kind enough to bring to us?
Her name is Mrs. Cheverly. One of the Dorsetshire Cheverleys, I suppose. I really don't know. Families are so mixed nowadays. Indeed, as a rule, everybody turns out to be somebody else.
Mrs. Cheverly? I seem to know the name.
She has just arrived from Vienna.
Ah, yes, I think I know whom you mean.
Oh, she goes everywhere there and has the most pleasant scandals about all her friends. I really must go to Vienna next winter. I hope there's a good chef at the embassy.
If there's not, the ambassador will surely have to be recalled. Pray, pronounce Mrs. Cheverly to me. I should like to see her.
Let me introduce you. My dear, Sir Robert Chiltern is dying to know you.
Everyone is dying to know the brilliant Mrs. Cheverly. Our attachés at Vienna write to us about nothing else.
Thank you, Sir Robert. An acquaintance that begins with a compliment is sure to develop into a real friendship. It starts in the right manner. And I find that I know Lady Chiltern already.
Really?
Yes, she has just reminded me that we were at school together. I remember it perfectly now. She always got the Good Conduct Prize. I have a distinct recollection of Lady Chiltern always getting the Good Conduct Prize.
And what prizes did you get, Mrs. Cheverly?
My prizes came a little later on in life. I don't think any of them were for good conduct. I forget.
I am sure they were for something charming.
Oh, I don't think women are always rewarded for being charming. I think they are usually punished for it. Certainly more women grow old nowadays through the faithfulness of their admirers than through anything else. At least, that is the only way I can account for the terribly haggard look of most of your pretty women in London.
What an appalling philosophy that sounds. To attempt to classify you, Mrs. Cheverly, would be an impertinence. But may I ask, at heart, are you an optimist or a pessimist? Those seem to be the only two fashionable religions left to us nowadays.
Oh, I am neither. Optimism begins with a broad grin, and pessimism ends with blue spectacles. Besides, they are both of them merely poses.
You prefer to be natural.
Sometimes, but it is a very difficult pose to keep up.
What would those modern psychological novelists, of whom we hear so much, say to such a theory as that?
The strength of women comes from the fact that psychology cannot explain us. Men can be analyzed. Women, merely adored.
You think science cannot grapple with the problem of women?
Science can never grapple with the irrational. And that is why it has no future before it in this world.
And women represent the irrational?
Well-dressed women do.
I fear I could hardly agree with you there. But do sit down. And now tell me, what makes you leave your brilliant Vienna for our gloomy London? Or perhaps the question is indiscreet?
The questions are never indiscreet. Answers sometimes are.
Well, at any rate, may I know if it's politics or pleasure?
Oh, politics are my only pleasure. You see, nowadays it is not fashionable to flirt till one is 40, or to be romantic till one is 45. So we poor women who are under 30, or say we are, have nothing open to us but politics or philanthropy. And philanthropy seems to me to have become simply the refuge of people who wish to annoy their fellow creatures. I prefer politics. I find them more becoming.
A political life is a noble career.
Sometimes. And sometimes it is a clever game, Sir Robert. And sometimes it is a great nuisance.
Which do you find it?
A combination of all three.
Allow me.
Thanks.
But you have not yet told me what makes you honor London so suddenly. Our season is almost over.
Oh, I don't care about the London season. It is far too matrimonial. Everyone is either hunting for husbands or hiding from them. I wanted to meet you. It is quite true. You know what a woman's curiosity is, almost as great as a man's. I wanted immensely to meet you, and to ask you to do something for me.
I hope it's not a little thing, Mrs. Cheverly. I find that little things are so very difficult to do.
No, I don't think it is quite a little thing.
I'm so glad. Do tell me what it is.
Later on. And now, may I walk through your beautiful house? I hear your pictures are charming. Poor Baron Arnheim. You remember the Baron? Used to tell me you had some wonderful Corot's.
Did you know Baron Arnheim well?
Intimately. Did you?
At one time.
Wonderful man, wasn't he?
He was very remarkable, in many ways.
I often think it's such a pity he never wrote his memoirs. They would have been most interesting.
Yes, he knew men and cities well, like the old Greek.
Without the dreadful disadvantage of having a Penelope waiting at home for him.
Good evening, my dear Arthur. Mrs. Cheveley, allow me to introduce to you Lord Goring, the idlest man in London.
I have met Lord Goring before.
I did not think you would remember me, Mrs. Cheveley.
My memory is under admirable control. And are you still a bachelor?
I believe so.
How very romantic.
Oh, I am not at all romantic. I am not old enough. I leave romance to my seniors. May I ask, are you staying in London long?
That depends. Partly on the weather, partly on the cooking, and partly on Sir Robert.
You are not going to plunge us into a European war, I hope.
Oh, there is no danger at present.
They say, Vicomte, that when good Americans die, they go to Paris.
But of course.
When bad Americans die, where do they go?
Oh, they go to America.
There is undoubtedly a great deal of corruption in American politics. I suppose you allude to that?
Politics are in a sad way everywhere. They certainly are in England. Say, do you think that uneducated people should have votes?
Why no? But you cannot deny that the House of Commons has always shown a great sympathy with the sufferings of the poor.
That is its special vice. That is the special vice of the age. One should sympathize with the joy, the beauty, and the color of life. The less said about life's source, the better.
May I ask, Mrs. Allenby, if you regard the House of Lords as a better institution than the House of Commons?
A much better institution, of course. The House of Lords is never in touch with public opinion. That makes it a civilized body.
You are very late.
Have you missed me?
Awfully.
Then I am sorry I did not stay away longer. I like being missed.
How very selfish of you.
I am very selfish.
You are always telling me of your bad qualities, Lord Goring.
I have not told you of half of them as yet.
Are the others very bad?
Quite dreadful. When I think of them at night, I go to sleep at once.
Well, I delight in your bad qualities. I wouldn't have you part with one of them.
That's very nice of you, but then you are always very nice. But, by the way, may I ask, who brought that lady here, the Mrs. Cheveley, the woman in white who has just gone out of the room with your brother?
I think Lady Markby brought her. Why do you ask?
Oh, I just haven't seen her for years, that's all.
What an absurd reason.
All reasons are absurd.
What sort of a woman is she?
Oh, a genius in the daytime, and a beauty at night.
I dislike her already.
That shows your admirable good taste.
Ah, the English young lady is the dragon of good taste, is she not? Quite the dragon of good taste?
So the newspapers are always telling us.
Ah, I read all your English newspapers. I find them so amusing.
Then, my dear non-Jacques, you must certainly read between the lines.
I should like to, but my professor objects. May I have the honor of taking you down to the music room, mademoiselle?
Delighted, Vicomte. Quite delighted. Aren't you coming to the music room?
Not if there's any music going on, Miss Mabel.
The music is in German. You would not understand it.
Well, sir. What are you doing here? Wasting your life as usual, I suppose. I told you, sir, you should be in bed. You keep 2 late hours. And I heard you dancing at Lady Rufford's until 4 o'clock in the morning.
Only 4:45, Father.
I can't make out how you stay in London society. Just damn lot of nobodies talking about nothing.
But, Father, I love talking about nothing. It is the only thing I know anything about.
You seem to me to be living entirely for pleasure.
Father, what else is there to live for? Nothing ages like happiness.
Oh, you are heartless, sir. Very heartless.
I hope not, Father. Good evening, Lady Basildon.
Oh, are you here? I had no idea you ever been to political parties.
I adore political parties. They're the only place left to us where people don't talk politics.
I delight in talking politics. I talk them all day long, but I can't bear listening to them. I don't know how the unfortunate men in the house stand these long debates.
By never listening.
Really?
Of course, you see, it is a very dangerous thing to listen. If one listens, one may be convinced. And a person who is convinced by rational argument is a thoroughly unreasonable person.
That accounts for so much in men that I have never understood, and so much in women that their husbands never appreciate in them.
Our husbands never appreciate anything in us. We have to go to others for that.
Yes, always to others. Have we not?
And those are the views of the two ladies known to have the most admirable husbands in London.
That is exactly what we women can't stand. My Reginald is quite hopelessly faultless. He is so unendurably so at times. There's not the smallest element of excitement in knowing him.
How terrible. Really, the whole thing should be more widely known.
Basil is quite as bad. He's as domestic as if he was a bachelor.
Oh, Olivia, we have married the perfect husbands and are well punished for it.
I thought it were the husbands who were punished.
No. They're as happy as possible. And as for trusting us, it's tragic how much they trust us.
Perfectly tragic.
Or comic, Lady Basil.
Oh, certainly not comic, Lord Goring. How unkind of you to suggest such a thing.
Well, Olivia, I'm afraid Lord Goring was in the camps of the enemy. I saw him talk to Miss Cheveley when he came in.
That's a woman, Mrs. Cheveley.
Oh, please don't praise other women in our presence. You might wait for us to do that.
I did wait.
Well, we are not going to praise her. I heard that she went to the opera on Monday night and told Tommy Rufford that as far as she could tell, the London society is filled with dowdies and dandies.
She is quite right, too. The men are all dowdies and the women are all dandies, aren't they?
You cannot possibly believe that's what she meant.
Of course, and it's quite a sensible remark for her to make, too.
Why are you talking about Mrs. Cheveley? Everybody is talking about Mrs. Cheveley. Lord Goring says... What did you say, Lord Goring, about Mrs. Cheveley? Oh, I remember that she was a genius in the daytime and a beauty at night.
What a horrid combination. So very unnatural.
I like looking at geniuses and listening to beautiful people.
That is morbid of you, Mrs. Marchmont.
Thank you. Marchmont and I have been married for 7 years, and never has he once called me morbid. Men are so painfully unobservant.
I have always said, dear Margaret, that you were the most morbid person in London.
Oh, thank you, Olivia. But you're always so sympathetic.
Is it morbid to have a desire for food? I have a great desire for food. Lord Goring, will you give me some supper?
With pleasure, Miss Mabel.
How horrid you have been. You have not talked to me the whole evening.
How could I? You went away with the child diplomatist.
You could have followed us. Pursuit would have been only polite. I don't think I like you at all this evening.
I like you immensely.
Well, I wish you would show it in a more marked way.
Olivia, I have a curious feeling of absolute faintness. I think I should like some supper. No, I know I should like some supper.
I'm positively dying for supper, Margaret.
Men are so painfully selfish. They never think of these things.
More grossly material. Grossly material.
May I have the honor of taking you down to supper, Comtesse?
Thank you, Vicomte, but I never take supper. But I will come down with you with pleasure.
I am so very fond of food. I am very English in all my tastes.
Oh, you're quite English, Vicomte, quite English.
And you, Mrs. Marchmont, may I have the pleasure of taking you down to supper as well?
Thank you. I never have supper, but I will sit and watch you.
I should like that.
And are you going to any of our country houses before you leave England, Mrs. Cheveley?
Oh no, I can't stand English house parties. In England, people actually try to be brilliant at breakfast. That is so dreadful of them. Only dull people are brilliant at breakfast. My stay in England really depends on you, Sir Robert.
Seriously?
Yes, quite seriously. I want to talk to you about a great political and financial scheme. About this Argentine Canal Company, in fact.
What a tedious practical subject for you to talk about, Mrs. Cheveley.
Oh, I like tedious practical subjects, but I don't like our tedious practical people. There is a wide difference. Besides, you are interested, I know, in international canal schemes. You were Lord Radley's secretary, weren't you, when the government bought the Suez Canal ships?
Yes, but the Suez Canal was a great and splendid undertaking. It gave us our direct route to India. It had imperial value. It was necessary that we should have control. This Argentine scheme is nothing but a commonplace stock exchange swindle.
Speculation, Sir Robert. A brilliant, daring speculation.
Believe me, Mrs. Cheveley, it is a swindle. Let us call things by their proper names. It makes matters simpler. We've all the information about it at the Foreign Office. In fact, I sent out a special commission to inquire into the matter privately, and they report that the works are hardly begun. And as for the money already subscribed, no one seems to know what's become of it. The whole thing is a second Panama, and without a quarter of a chance of success that miserable affair ever had. I hope you have not invested in it. I'm sure you are far too clever to have done that.
I have invested very largely in it.
Who could have advised you to do such a foolish thing?
Your old friend, and mine.
Who?
Baron Arnheim.
Ah, yes. I remember hearing, at the time of his death, that he was mixed up in the whole affair.
It was his last romance. His last but one to do him justice.
But I've not yet shown you my Corrots. They're in the music room. Corrots seem to go with music, don't they? May I show them to you?
I'm not in the mood tonight for silver twilights or rose-pink dawns. I want to talk business.
I'm afraid I have no advice to give you, Mrs. Cheveley, except to interest yourself in something less dangerous. The success of the canal depends, of course, on the attitude of England. And I'm going to lay the report of the Commission before the House tomorrow night.
That you must not do. In your own interest, Sir Robert, to say nothing of mine, you must not do that.
In my own interest? My dear Mrs. Cheveley, what do you mean?
Sir Robert, I'm going to be frank with you. I want you to withdraw the report you had intended to lay before the House, on the grounds that you have reason to believe the commissioners have been prejudiced or misinformed or something. Then, I want you to say a few words to the effect that the government is going to reconsider the question, and that you have reason to believe that the canal, if completed, will be of great international value. You know the sorts of things ministers say in cases of this kind. A few ordinary platitudes will do. In modern life, nothing produces such an effect as a good platitude. It makes the whole world kin. Will you do that for me?
Mrs. Cheveley, you cannot be serious in making me such a proposition.
I am quite serious.
Pray, allow me to believe that you are not.
Ah, but I am. And if you do as I ask you, I will pay you.
Pay me?
Yes.
I'm afraid I don't quite understand what you mean.
Oh, very disappointing. And I've come all the way from Vienna in order that you should thoroughly understand me.
I fear I don't.
My dear Sir Robert, you are a man of the world, and you have your price, I suppose. Everybody has nowadays. The only drawback is that most people are so dreadfully expensive. I know I am. I hope you will be more reasonable in your terms.
If you will allow me, I will call your carriage for you. You have lived so long abroad, Mrs. Cheveley, that you seem to be unable to realize that you are talking to an English gentleman.
I realize that I am talking to a man who laid the foundation of his fortune by selling to a stock exchange speculator a cabinet secret.
What do you mean?
I mean that I know the real origin of your wealth and career. And I have got your letter, too.
What letter?
The letter you wrote to Baron Arnheim when you were Lord Radley's secretary, telling the Baron to buy Suez Canal shares. A letter written 3 days before the government announced its own purchase.
It is not true.
You thought that letter had been destroyed. How foolish of you. It is in my possession.
The affair to which you allude was no more than speculation. The House had not yet passed the bill. It might have been rejected.
It was a swindle, Sir Robert. Let us call things by their proper names. It makes everything simpler. And now, I'm going to sell you that letter. And the price that I asked for it is your public support of this Argentine scheme. You made your own fortune out of one canal. You must help me and my friends to make our fortunes out of another.
It is infamous what you propose. Infamous.
Oh no. This is the game of life, as we all have to play it, Sir Robert, sooner or later.
I cannot do what you ask me.
You mean you cannot help doing it? You know that you are standing on the edge of a precipice, and it is not for you to make terms. It is for you to accept them. Supposing you refuse.
What then?
My dear Sir Robert, what then? You are ruined, that is all. Remember to what a point your Puritanism in England has brought you. In old days, nobody pretended to be a bit better than his neighbor. In fact, to be a bit better than one's neighbor was considered excessively vulgar and middle class. Nowadays, with our modern mania for morality, everyone has got to pose as a paragon of purity, incorruptibility, and all the other 7 deadly virtues. And what is the result? You all go over like 9 pins, one after the other. Not a year goes by in England without somebody disappearing. Scandals used to lend charm, or at least interest to a man. Now, they crush him. Yours is a very nasty scandal. You couldn't survive it. Fit were known that as a young man, secretary to a great and important minister, you sold a cabinet secret for a large sum of money, and that was the origin of your wealth and career, you would be hounded out of public life. You would disappear completely. Sooner or later, we all have to pay for what we do. You have to pay now. Before I leave you tonight, you have got to promise that you will suppress your report and speak in the House in favor of this scheme.
What you ask is impossible.
Then you must make it possible. You are going to make it possible. Sir Robert, you know what your English newspapers are like. Suppose that when I leave you tonight, I drive down to some newspaper office and give them this scandal and the proofs of it. Think of their loathsome joy, of the delight they would have in dragging you down, of the mud and mire they would plunge you in. Think of the hypocrite with his greasy smile, penning his leading article and arranging the foulness of the public placard.
Stop! You want me to withdraw the report? And to make a short speech stating I believe there are possibilities in the scheme?
Those are my terms.
I will pay you any sum of money you want.
Even you are not rich enough, Sir Robert, to buy back your past. No man is.
I will not do what you ask me. I will not.
You must. If you don't...
Wait a moment. What did you propose? You said that you would give me back my letter, didn't you?
Yes, that is agreed. I will be in the ladies' gallery tomorrow night at 11:30. If by that time, and you will have had heaps of opportunity, you have made an announcement in the House in the terms I wish, I shall hand you back your letter with the prettiest of thanks and the best, or at any rate the most suitable compliment I could think of. I intend to play quite fairly with you. One should always play fairly when one has the winning cards. The Baron taught me that, amongst other things.
You must give me time to consider your proposal.
No, you must settle now.
Give me a week. 3 days.
Impossible. I've got to telegraph to Vienna tonight.
My God, what brought you into my life?
Circumstances.
Don't go. I consent. The report shall be withdrawn. I'll have a question put to me on the subject.
Thank you. I knew we could come to an amicable agreement. And now you may get my carriage for me. I see that people are coming out from supper, and Englishmen always get romantic after a meal. That bores me dreadfully.
Oh dear, dear Mrs. Cheverly. Well, I hope you have enjoyed yourself. Sir Robert is very entertaining, is he not?
Most entertaining. I enjoyed my talk with him immensely.
He has had a very interesting and brilliant career. And he has married a most admirable wife. Lady Chiltern is a woman of the very highest principles, I'm glad to say. I'm a little too old now myself to trouble about setting a good example. But I always admire those who do. And Lady Chiltern has a very ennobling effect on life, though her dinner parties can be rather dull sometimes. And now I must go, dear. Shall I call for you tomorrow?
Thanks.
We might drive in the park at 5. Everything looks so fresh in the park now.
Except the people.
Perhaps the people are a little jaded. I have often observed that the season as it goes on produces a kind of softening of the brain. But I think anything is better than high intellectual pressure. That is the most unbecoming thing there is. It makes the noses of the young girls so particularly large. And there's nothing so hard to marry as a large nose. Men don't like them. Goodbye, dear. Goodbye, Gertrude.
Ah, Lord Caversham. What a charming house you have, Lady Chiltern. I have spent a delightful evening. It has been so interesting getting to know your husband.
Why did you wish to meet my husband tonight, Mrs. Cheverly?
Oh, I will tell you. I wanted to interest him in this Argentine canal scheme, of which I dare say you've heard, and I found him most susceptible. Susceptible to reason, I mean, a rare thing in a man. I converted him in 10 minutes. He's going to give a speech tomorrow in the House. We must go and hear him. It will be a great occasion.
There must be some mistake. That scheme could never have my husband's support.
Oh, I assure you it's all settled. I don't regret my tedious journey from Vienna now. It has been a great success. But of course, for the next 24 hours, the whole thing is a dead secret.
Secret? Between whom?
Between your husband and myself.
Your carriage is here, Mrs. Shebley.
Thank you. Good night, Lady Shilton. Good night, Lord Goring. I'm at Claridge's. Don't you think you might leave a card?
If you wish it, Mrs. Shebley.
Oh, don't be so solemn about it, or I shall be obliged to leave a card on you. In England, I suppose, that would hardly be considered en rogue. Abroad, we are more civilized. Won't you see me down? Now that we have the same interests at heart, we shall be great friends, I hope.
What a horrid woman.
You should go to bed, Miss Mabel.
Lord Goring!
My father told me to go to bed an hour ago. I don't see why I shouldn't give you the same advice. Why? I always pass on good advice. It is the only thing to do with it. It is never of any use to oneself.
Lord Goring, you are always ordering me out of the room. I think it is most courageous of you, especially as I'm not going to bed for hours. What is this? Someone has dropped a diamond brooch. Quite beautiful, isn't it? I wish it were mine, but Gertrude won't let me wear anything but pearls, and I'm thoroughly sick of pearls. They make one look so plain, so good, and so intellectual. I wonder whom the brooch belongs to.
I wonder who dropped it.
It is a beautiful brooch.
It is a handsome bracelet.
It isn't a bracelet, it's a brooch.
It can be worn as a bracelet. Miss Mabel, I have a rather strange request to make to you.
Really?
Don't mention to anybody that I have taken charge of this brooch. If anybody should write or claim it, let me know at once.
That is a strange request.
Yes, you see, I gave this brooch to somebody once, years ago.
You did?
Yes.
Then I shall certainly bid you good night. Good night, Gertrude.
Good night, dear. You saw whom Lady Markby brought here tonight?
Yes, it was an unpleasant surprise. What did she come here for?
Apparently to try and lure Robert to uphold some fraudulent scheme in which he is interested. The Argentine Canal, in fact.
She has mistaken her man, hasn't she?
She is incapable of understanding an upright nature like my husband's.
Yes, I fancy she'd come to grief if she tried to lure Robert into her toils. It is extraordinary what clever, astounding mistakes clever women make.
I don't call women of that kind clever. I call them stupid.
Same thing often. Good night, Lady Shilton.
Good night.
My dear Arthur, you're not going. Do stop a little.
Afraid I can't, thanks. I've promised to look in at the art loft. They've got a mauve Hungarian band that plays mauve Hungarian music. See you soon. Goodbye.
How beautiful you look tonight, Gertrude.
Oh, Robert, it is not true, is it? You're not going to lend your support to this Argentine speculation? You couldn't.
Who told you I intended to do so?
That woman who has just gone out, Mrs. Cheverly, as she calls herself now, she seemed to taunt me with it, Robert. I know this woman. You don't. We were at school together. She was dishonest, untruthful, an evil influence on everyone whose trust or friendship she could win. I despised her. She stole things. She was a thief. She was sent away for being a thief. Why do you let her influence you?
Gertrude, what you tell me may be true, but it happened many years ago. It is best forgotten. Mrs. Shelley may have changed since then. No one should be entirely judged by their past.
One's past is what one is. It is the only way by which people should be judged.
That is a hard saying, Gertrude.
It is a true saying, Robert. And what did she mean by boasting that she got you to lend your name, your support, to a thing I've heard you describe as the most fraudulent and dishonest thing there's ever been in political life?
I was mistaken in the view I took her. We all may make mistakes.
But you told me yesterday that you had received the report from the commission and that it entirely condemned the whole thing.
I have reason now to believe that the commission was prejudiced, or at any rate, misinformed. Besides, Gertrude, public and private life are different things. They have different laws and move on different lines.
They should both represent man at his highest. I see no difference between them.
In the present case, on a matter of practical politics, I have changed my mind. That is all.
All?
Yes.
Oh, Robert. It's horrible that I should have to ask you such a question. Robert, are you telling me the whole truth?
Why do you ask me such a question?
Why do you not answer it?
Gertrude, truth is a very complex thing. And politics is a very complex business. There are wheels within wheels. One may be under certain obligations to people that one must keep. Sooner or later in political life, one has to compromise. Everyone does.
Compromise? Robert, why do you talk so differently tonight from the way I've always heard you talk? Why are you changed?
I am not changed, but circumstances alter things.
Circumstances should never alter principles.
But if I told you
What?
that it was necessary, vitally necessary,
It can never be necessary to do what is not honorable. And if it be necessary, then what is it that I have loved? But it is not, Robert. Tell me it is not.
Why should it be? What gain would you get? Money? Money is nothing in itself. It is money. Money is a degradation.
Power? Power is nothing in itself. It is power to do good, that and that only. What is it then, Robert? Tell me where you're going to do this dishonorable thing.
Gertrude, you have no right to use that word. I told you it was a question of rational compromise. It is no more than that.
It is all very well for other men, for men who treat life simply as a sordid speculation. But not for you, Robert. Not for you. You are different. All your life you have stood apart from others. You've never let the world swallow you. To the world as to myself, you have been an ideal always. Oh, be that ideal still. Robert, men can love what is beneath them. Things unworthy, stained, dishonored. We women worship when we love. And when we lose our worship, we lose everything. Don't kill my love for you, Robert. Don't kill that.
Gertrude.
Robert, I know that there are men with horrible secrets in their lives. Men who have done some shameful thing and who in some critical moments have to pay for it by doing some other act of shame. Oh, don't tell me you're such as they are. Robert, is there in your life any secret dishonor or disgrace? Tell me. Tell me at once that...
That what?
That our lives may drift apart.
Drift apart?
That they may be entirely separate. It would be better for us both.
Gertrude, there is nothing in my past life that you might not know.
Oh, I was sure of it. I was sure of it. Why did you say those dreadful things tonight? Being so unlike your real self. But let us not speak of that. You will write, won't you, to Mrs. Cheverly, and tell her that you cannot support this scheme of hers. If you have given her any promise, you must take it back at once. That is all.
Must I write and tell her that?
Surely, Robert. What else is there to do?
I might go and see her personally. It would be better.
No. You must never see her again. She's a woman you must never speak to. She's not worthy to talk to a man like you. No. You must write, now, this moment, and tell her that your decision is quite irrevocable.
Right now?
Yes.
But it is so late. It is close on 12.
That makes no matter. She must know at once that she has been mistaken in you, and that you are not a man to do anything base or underhand or dishonorable. Yes, right here. Write the word dishonest. She knows what the word means. Robert, love gives one an instinct to things. I feel tonight that I have saved you from something that may have been a danger to you. From something that would have made men honor you less. I don't think you realize sufficiently what you have done for this time. You have brought into the political life of our time a nobler atmosphere, a finer attitude towards life, a freer air of pure aims and higher ideals. I know it, and for that I love you.
Love me always,
My dear fellow, it's a very awkward business. Very awkward indeed. You should have told your wife the whole thing. Secrets from other people's wives are a necessary luxury in modern life, but no man should have a secret from his own wife. She invariably finds it out. Women have a wonderful instinct about things. They can discover everything, except the obvious.
Arthur, I couldn't tell my wife. When could I have told her? Not last night. It would have made a lifelong separation between us. And I would have lost the love of the one woman in the world I worship. Of the only woman who has ever stirred love within me. Last night, it would have been quite impossible. She would have turned from me in horror and in contempt.
Is Lady Chiltern as perfect as all that?
Yes, my wife is as perfect as all that.
What a pity! I beg your pardon, I didn't quite mean it like that, but if what you tell me is true, then I should like to have a very serious conversation about life with Lady Chiltern.
It would be quite useless.
May I try?
Yes, but nothing could make her alter her views.
At the worst, it would simply be a psychological experiment.
All such experiments are terribly dangerous.
Everything is dangerous, my dear fellow. If it wasn't so, life wouldn't be worth living. I'm bound to say, you should have told her years ago.
When? When we were engaged? Do you think she would have married me if she had known that the origin of my fortune is such as it is? The basis of my career such as it is? Or that I had done a thing I suppose most men would call shameful and dishonorable?
Yes, most men would call it ugly names. There's no doubt of that.
Men who every day do something of the same kind themselves. Men who, each one of them, have worse secrets in their own lives.
That is the reason they are so pleased to find out other people's secrets. It distracts public attention from their own.
And after all, whom did I wrong by what I did? No one.
Except yourself, Robert.
Arthur, of course I had private information about a certain transaction contemplated by the government of the day, and I acted on it. Private information is practically the source of every large modern fortune.
And public scandal invariably the result.
Arthur, do you think that what I did nearly 18 years ago should be brought up against me now? I was 22 at the time, and had the double misfortune of being well-born and poor, two unforgivable things nowadays. Is it fair that the folly, the sin of one's youth, if men choose to call it a sin, should wreck a life like mine? Should shatter all that I've worked for, all that I've built up? Is it fair, Arthur?
Life is never fair, Robert. Perhaps it is a good thing for most of us that it is not.
Every man of ambition has to fight his century with its own weapons. What this century worships is wealth. The god of this century is wealth. To succeed, one must have wealth. At all costs, one must have wealth.
You underrate yourself, Robert. Without wealth, you could have succeeded just as well.
When I was old, perhaps. When I lost my passion for power or could not use it. When I was tired, worn out, disappointed. I wanted my success when I was young. Youth is the time for success. I couldn't wait.
Well, you certainly have had your success while you are still young. Under Secretary for Foreign Affairs at the age of 40. Good enough for anyone, I should think.
And if it is all taken away from me now? If I lose everything over a horrible scandal? If I am hounded from public life?
Robert, how could you have sold yourself for money?
I did not sell myself for money. I bought success at a great price. That is all.
Yes, you certainly paid a great price for it. But what first made you think of doing such a thing?
Baron Arnhem?
Damn scoundrel!
No. He was a man of the most subtle and refined intellect. A man of culture, charm, and distinction.
I prefer a gentlemanly fool any day. I think there's more to be said about stupidity than people imagine. Personally, I have a great admiration for stupidity. It is a sort of fellow feeling, I suppose. But how did he do it? Tell me the whole thing.
One night, after dinner at Lord Bradley's, the Baron began talking about success in modern life as something which one could reduce to an absolutely definite science. With that wonderfully fascinating, quiet voice of his, he expounded to us the most terrible of all philosophies, the philosophy of power. Preached the most marvelous of all gospels, the gospel of gold. I think he saw the effect he had produced on me. For some time after, he wrote and asked me to come and see him. He was living then in Park Lane, in the house that Woolcombe has now. I remember so well how, with a strange smile on his pale, curved lips, he led me through his wonderful picture gallery, showing me his tapestries, his enamels, his jewels, his carved ivories, made me wonder at the strange loveliness of the luxury in which he lived. And then told me that luxury was nothing but a background, a painted scene in a play, and that power over other men, power over the world was the one thing worth having, the one supreme pleasure worth knowing, the one joy one never tired of, and that, in our century, only the rich possessed it.
A thoroughly shallow creed.
I didn't think so then. I don't think so now. Wealth has given me enormous power. It gave me, at the very outset of my life, freedom. And freedom is everything. You have never been poor, never known what ambition is. You cannot understand what a wonderful chance the Baron held out to me. Such a chance as few men get.
Fortunately for them, if one is to judge by results. But tell me definitely, how did he persuade you to do what you did?
When I was going, the Baron said to me that if ever I could give to him any private information of any real value, he would make me a very rich man. I was dazed at the prospect he held out to me, and at that time, my ambition and desire for power were boundless. 6 weeks later, certain private documents passed through my hands.
State documents?
Yes.
I had no idea that you, of all men in the world, could have been so weak, Robert, as to yield to such a temptation as Baron Arnheim held out to you.
Weak. Well, I'm sick of hearing that phrase. Sick of using it about others. Weak? Do you really think, Arthur, that it is weakness that yields to temptation? I tell you that there are terrible temptations that require strength and courage to yield to. To stake all one's life on a single moment, to risk everything on one throw. Whether the stake be power or pleasure, I care not. There's no weakness in that. There's a horrible, a terrible courage. I had that courage. I sat down the same afternoon and wrote the Baron the letter this woman holds now. He made $750,000 over the transaction.
And you?
The Baron gave to me £110,000.
You were worth more, Robert.
No. That money gave me exactly what I wanted. Power over others. I went into the house immediately. The Baron advised me in finance from time to time. For 4 or 5 years, I almost trebled my fortune. Since then, everything that I've touched has turned out a success. In all things connected with money, I've had a luck so extraordinary that sometimes it has made me almost afraid.
And did you never suffer any regret for what you had done?
No. I thought that I had fought the century with its own weapons and won.
You thought you had won.
I thought so. Arthur, do you despise me for what I have told you?
I am very sorry for you, Robert. Very sorry indeed.
I don't say I suffered any remorse for what I did. Not remorse in the ordinary, rather silly sense of the word. But I have paid conscience money many times. The sum Baron Arnheim gave me, I have distributed twice over in public charities.
In public charities? Dear me, what a lot of harm you must have done, Robert.
Don't say that, Arthur. Don't talk like that.
Never mind what I say. I'm always saying what I shouldn't say. In fact, I usually say what I really think. A great mistake nowadays. Makes one so liable to be misunderstood. As regards this dreadful business, I will help you out in whatever way I can. Of course, you know that.
Thank you, Arthur. Thank you. But what is to be done? What can be done?
A confession would be of no use. The money, if you will allow me to say so, is awkward. Besides, if you did make a clean breast of the whole affair, you would never be able to talk morality again. And in England, a man who can't talk morality twice a week to a large, popular, immoral audience is white over as a serious politician. Confession would be of no use. It would ruin me.
It would ruin me. Arthur, the only thing left for me to do now is to fight the thing out.
I was waiting for you to say that, Robert. It is the only thing for you to do now. And you must begin by telling your wife the whole thing.
That I will not do.
Believe me, you are wrong.
It would kill her love for me. And now about this woman, this Mrs. Shebley. How can I defend myself against her? You knew her before, Arthur, apparently.
Yes.
Did you know her well?
So little that I got engaged to be married to her once. The whole affair lasted 3 days. Nearly.
Why was it broken off?
Oh, I forget. At least it makes no matter. By the way, have you tried her with money? She used to be confoundedly fond of money.
I offered her any sum she wanted. She refused.
Then the marvelous gospel of gold breaks down sometimes. The rich can't do everything after all.
Not everything. I suppose you're right. Arthur, I feel that public disgrace is in store for me. I feel certain of it. I never knew what terror was before. I know it now. It is as if a hand of ice were laid upon one's heart.
You must fight her, Robert. You must fight her.
But how?
I haven't the smallest idea how at present. But there is some flaw in each one of us. Even my father says I have faults. Perhaps I have. I don't know.
In defending myself against Mrs. Shebley, I have a right to use any weapon I can find, have I not?
I shouldn't have the smallest scruple in doing so. She seems well able to take care of herself.
I will fight her to the death, so long as my wife knows nothing.
Oh, fight in any case. In any case.
Mason, bring tea.
Hush, I hear my wife's voice.
Good afternoon, Lord Goring.
Good afternoon, Lady Shulter. Have you been in the park?
No, I've just come from the Women's Liberal Association, where, by the way, Robert, your name was received with loud applause. And now I've come in to have my tea. You will stay and have some tea, won't you?
Yes, I'll wait for a short time.
I'll be back in just a moment. I'm only going to take off my hat.
Oh, please don't. It is so pretty. It's one of the prettiest hats I ever saw. I hope the Women's Liberal Association received it with loud applause.
We have far much more important work to do, Lord Goring, than look at each other's bonnets.
Really? What sort of work?
Oh, dull, useful, delightful things. Factory acts, female inspectors, the 8 hours bill, the parliamentary franchise. Everything about that you would find thoroughly uninteresting.
Into never bonnets.
Never bonnets, never.
You have been a thoroughly good friend to me, Arthur. A thoroughly good friend.
I'm not sure I've been able to do much for you, Robert. In fact, I haven't been able to do anything for you, as far as I can tell.
You have allowed me to tell you the truth. That is something. The truth has always stifled me.
The truth is a thing that I get rid of as soon as possible.
I'll see you soon again, shan't I, Arthur?
Yes, I'll come round tomorrow morning.
Thanks.
You are not going, Robert.
I have some work to do here.
You work too hard. You seem never to think of yourself.
It is nothing, dear. Nothing.
Do sit down. I'm so glad you've called. I want to talk to you about, well, not about bonnets or the Women's Liberal Association. You take far too much interest in the first subject and not nearly enough in the second.
You want to talk to me about Mrs. Cheverly, don't you?
Yes, you have guessed it. Last night, after you left, I found out that what she had said was really true. Of course, I made Robert write her a letter at once, withdrawing his promise.
So he gave me to understand.
To have kept it would have been the first stain on a career that has been stainless always. Robert must be above reproach. He's not like other men. He cannot afford to do what other men do. Don't you agree with me? You are Robert's greatest friend. No one except myself knows Robert better than you do. He has no secrets from me, and I don't think he has any from you.
No, he certainly has no secrets from me, as far as I can tell.
Then am I not right in my estimate of him? Surely I am right, but speak to me frankly.
Quite frankly.
Yes, you have nothing to conceal, have you?
No. But my dear Lady Shulter, I think that in practical life,
Of which you know so little about, Lord Goring.
of which I know nothing by experience, but I know something through observation, I think that in practical life, there's something about ambition which is a little unscrupulous. Something about success, actual success, which is unscrupulous always. Once a man has set his heart and soul on getting to a certain point, if he has to climb the crag, he climbs the crag. If he has to walk in the mire,
Well,
he walks in the mire. I'm only speaking generally about life, of course.
I hope so. Why do you look at me so strangely, Lord Goring?
I have sometimes thought that perhaps you are a little hard on some of your views on life. That you don't make sufficient allowances. In every nature, there are elements of weakness. Say, my father, or Lord Merton, or Robert, say, had written some foolish letter to someone.
What do you mean by a foolish letter?
A letter gravely compromising one's position. I'm only speaking hypothetically, of course.
Robert is as incapable of doing a foolish thing as he is of doing a wrong thing.
Nobody is incapable of doing a foolish thing. Nobody is incapable of doing a wrong thing.
Are you a pessimist? What will the other dandies say? They will all have to go into mourning.
No, Lady Shilton, I am not a pessimist. In fact, I'm not sure that I really know what pessimism means. All I do know is that life cannot be understood without much charity. Cannot be lived without much charity. And if you are ever in trouble, come to me for help. Trust me absolutely, and I will help you in whatever way I can.
You are talking to me quite seriously, Lord Goring. I don't think you've ever talked to me seriously before.
It won't occur again, if I can help it.
But I like you to be serious.
Dear Gertrude, don't say such a dreadful thing to Lord Goring. Seriousness would be very unbecoming to him. Good afternoon, Lord Goring. Pray be as trivial as you can.
I should like to, Miss Mabel, but I'm afraid I'm a little out of practice this morning. And besides, I must be going.
Just when I have come in. What dreadful manners you have. I am sure you were very badly brought up.
I was.
I wish I had brought you up.
I am so sorry you didn't.
It is too late now, I suppose.
Oh, I'm not so sure.
Will you ride tomorrow morning?
Yes, at 10.
Don't forget.
No, I shan't. By the way, Lady Shilton, there's no list of your guests in the Morning Post. Could I have a list? I have a very particular reason for asking you.
I'm sure Mr. Trafford will be able to give you one.
Thanks so much.
Tommy is the most useful person in London.
And who is the most ornamental?
I am.
How clever of you to guess it. Lady Shilton, you will remember what I have told you.
I will, but I don't know why you said it to me.
Neither do I. Goodbye, Miss Mabel.
Oh, I wish you were not going. I have had 4 wonderful adventures this morning. 4.5, in fact. You might stop and listen to some of them.
4.5. How very selfish of you. There won't be any left for me to have.
I don't want you to have any. They would not be good for you.
That is the most unkind thing you have ever said to me. How charmingly you said it. 10 tomorrow?
Sharp.
Quite sharp, but don't bring Mr. Trafford.
Oh, I shan't bring Tommy Trafford. Tommy Trafford is in great disgrace.
I am delighted to hear it.
Gertrude, I wish you would speak to Tommy Trafford.
Dear Mabel, what has poor Mr. Trafford done this time?
Well, Tommy has proposed to me again. Tommy really does nothing but propose to me. He proposed to me last night in the music room when I was quite unprotected, as there was an elaborate trio going on. I didn't make the smallest repartee, I need hardly tell you. If I had, it would have stopped the music at once. Then, he proposed to me in broad daylight this morning, in front of that dreadful statue of Achilles. Really, the things that go on in front of that work of art are quite appalling. The police should interfere. Then, I saw by the glare in his eye that he was going to propose to me again, and I just managed to check him in time by telling him that I was a bimetallist. Fortunately, I don't know what bimetallism means, and I don't think anybody else does either. But the observation crushed Tommy for 10 minutes. He looked quite shocked. And then, Tommy is so annoying in the way he proposes. If he proposed at the top of his voice, I shouldn't mind so much, but he does it in a horrid confidential way. When Tommy wants to be romantic, he talks to one just like a doctor. I really am very fond of Tommy, but his methods of proposing are quite out of date. I wish, Gertrude, you would speak to Tommy Trafford and tell him that once a week is quite often enough to propose to anyone, and that it should always be done in a manner that attracts some attention.
Dear Mabel, don't talk like that. Besides, Robert thinks very highly of Mr. Trafford. He thinks he has a brilliant future before him.
Oh, I wouldn't marry a man with a future before him for anything under the sun.
Mabel!
I know, dear. You married a man with a future before him, didn't you? But then, Robert was a genius, and you have a noble, self-sacrificing character. You can stand geniuses. I have no character at all, and Robert is the only genius I could ever bear. As a rule, I think they are quite impossible. Geniuses talk so much, don't they? And they are always thinking about themselves when I want them to be thinking about me. I must go round now and rehearse at Lady Basil's. You remember we are having tableau, don't you? Oh, Gertrude, do you know who is coming up to see you? That dreadful Mrs. Cheveley in a most lovely gown. Did you ask her?
Mrs. Cheveley? Coming to see me? Oh, impossible.
I assure you she is coming upstairs. As large as life and not nearly so natural.
Lady Markby, Miss Allenby, and Miss Cheveley.
Oh, dear Gertrude.
Dear Lady Markby, how nice of you to come and see me. Mrs. Allenby, Mrs. Cheveley, won't you sit down?
Thanks. Isn't that Miss Shelton? I should like so much to know her.
Mabel, Mrs. Cheveley wishes to know you.
I thought your frock so charming last night, Miss Chiltern. So simple and suitable.
Really? I must tell my dressmaker. It will be such a surprise to her. Goodbye, Lady Markby.
Dear Gertrude, we just called to know if Mrs. Cheveley's diamond brooch had been found.
Here? Yes, I missed it when I got back to Claridge's. I thought I might possibly have dropped it here.
I've heard nothing about it, but I will ring for the butler and ask.
Oh, pray don't bother. I dare say I lost it at the opera before we came on here.
Ah, yes, it must have been at the opera. The fact is that we all scramble and jostle so much nowadays that I wonder we have anything at all left on us at the end of an evening. I know myself that when I come back from the drawing room, I always feel as if I hadn't a shred on me. Except a small shred of decent reputation, just enough to prevent the lower classes making painful observations through the windows of the carriage. The fact is that our society is terribly overpopulated. Really, someone should arrange a proper scheme of assisted emigration. It would do a great deal of good.
What sort of brooch was it you lost, Mrs. Cheveley?
It was a diamond brooch with a ruby, a rather large ruby.
I thought you said there was a sapphire on the head, dear.
No, Lady Markby, a ruby.
And very becoming, I'm quite sure.
Has a ruby and diamond brooch been found in any of the rooms this morning, Mason?
No, my lady.
Really, it is of no consequence, Lady Chiltern. I am sorry to have been of any inconvenience.
Oh, it has been no inconvenience. That will do, Mason. You can bring tea.
Well, I must say, it is most annoying to lose anything. I remember once at Bath, years ago, losing in the pump room an exceedingly handsome cameo bracelet that Sir John had given me. I don't think he has given me anything since, I'm sorry to say. He has sadly degenerated. Really, this horrid House of Commons quite ruins our husbands for us. I think the lower house by far the greatest blow to a happy married life that there has been since that terrible thing called the higher education of women was invented.
Oh, it is heresy to say such a thing in this house, Lady Markby. Robert is a great champion of the higher education of women, and so I am afraid am I.
Higher education of men is what I should like to see. Men need it so sadly.
They do, dear. But I'm afraid such a scheme would be quite unpractical. I don't think man has much capacity for development. He has got as far as he can. And that is not far, is it? With regard to women, well, dear Gertrude, you belong to the younger generation, and I'm sure that is all right if you approve of it. In my time, of course, we were taught not to understand anything. That was the old system, and wonderfully interesting it was. I assure you, the amount of things I and my poor dear sister were taught not to understand was quite extraordinary. But modern women understand everything, or so I am told.
Except their husbands. That is the one thing that modern women will never understand.
And a very good thing too, dear, I dare say. It might ruin many a happy home if they did. Not yours, I need hardly say, Gertrude. You have married a pattern husband. I wish I could say as much for myself. But since Sir John has taken to attending the debates regularly, which he never used to do in the good old days, his language has become quite unpractical. He always seems to think he's addressing the house. And consequently, whenever he discusses the state of the agricultural laborer, or the Welsh church, or something quite improper of that kind, I am obliged to send all the servants out of the room. It is not pleasant to see one's own butler, who has been with one for 23 years, actually blushing at the sideboards, and a footman making contortions in corners like persons in circuses. I assure you, my life will be quite ruined unless they send John at once to the upper house. He won't take any interest in politics then, will he? The House of Lords is so sensible, an assembly of gentlemen. But in his present state, Sir John is really a great trial. Why, this morning before breakfast was half over, he stood up on the hearthrug, put his hands in his pockets, and appealed to the country at the top of his voice. I left the table as soon as I had my second cup of tea, I need hardly say. But his violent language could be heard all over the house. I trust, Gertrude, that Sir Robert is not like that.
But I'm very much interested in politics, Lady Markby. I love to hear Robert talk about them.
My Ernest has got no conversation at all, Lady Markby.
I adore silent men.
Well, Ernest isn't silent. He talks the whole time, but he's got no conversation. What he talks about, I don't know. I haven't listened to him for years.
Does he become angry with you for that?
Oh dear no. Ernest is invariably calm. That is one of the reasons he always gets on my nerves. Nothing is so aggravating as calmness. There's something positively brutal about the good temper of the most modern men. Honestly, I wonder how we women stand it as well as we do.
Yes, men's good temper shows that they are not so sensitive as we are, not so finely strung. But do tell me, what is wrong with Mr. Allenby?
Well, I will tell you as long as you promise to tell everybody else.
Thank you, dear. I will make a point of repeating it.
Well, when Ernest and I were engaged, he swore to me positively on his knees that he had never loved anyone in the whole course of his life. I was very young at the time, so I didn't believe him, I needn't tell you. Unfortunately, however, I made no inquiries of any kind till we had been married 4 or 5 months. Then I found out what he had told me was perfectly true. And that means a man so absolutely uninteresting.
My dear.
The thing is, man always wants to be a woman's first love. That is his clumsy vanity. But we women have a more subtle instinct about things. What we like to be is a man's last romance.
My dear child, I believe you are very happy in your married life, but that you like to hide your happiness from others.
I'm sure you. I was horribly deceived in Ernest.
It is very much to be regretted that in our rank of life, the wife should be so persistently frivolous. Under the impression, apparently, that it is the proper thing to be. It is to that I attribute the unhappiness of so many marriages we all know of in society.
You know, Lady Markby, I don't think the frivolity of the wife has ever anything to do with it. Most marriages nowadays are ruined by the common sense of the husband than by anything else. I mean, how is a woman expected to be happy with a man who insists on treating her as if she were a perfectly rational being?
My dear!
Man, poor, awkward, reliable, necessary man, belongs to a sex that has been rational for millions and millions of years. He can't help himself. It is in his race. But we women have a more... But the history of women is quite different, actually. We have always been the picturesque protest against the mere existence of common sense. We saw its dangers from the first.
Do tell me your conception of the ideal husband. I think it would be so very helpful.
The ideal husband, there couldn't be such a thing.
The ideal man, then, in his relations to us.
The ideal man should talk to us as if we were goddesses, and treat us as if we were children. He should refuse all of our serious requests and gratify every one of our whims. He should forbid us to have missions and encourage us to have caprices. He should always mean much more than he says, and always says much more than he means.
It seems to me he's to do nothing but pay bills and compliments.
We should be able to create a perfectly terrible scene whenever we want to, and to become miserable, absolutely miserable at a moment's notice, and to overwhelm us with just reproaches in less than 20 minutes, and to leave us forever at 7:45 when we have to go and dress for dinner. Then when one has really seen him for the last time, and he's refused to take back all the little things he has given one and promised never to communicate to one again or send one any foolish letters, we should be perfectly broken-hearted and telegraph to one all day long and send one little notes every half hour by private hansom, and to dine quite alone at the club so that everyone can see how unhappy he was. And after a whole dreadful week, he must admit that he was entirely in the wrong. And once he's admitted that, then it becomes a woman's duty to forgive him.
How clever you are, my dear. You never mean a single word you say.
It has been most entrancing. I must try to remember it all. There are such a number of details that are so very important.
Mrs. Cheverly, would you like some tea?
Thanks.
Some tea, Lady Markby, Mrs. Allenby?
No thanks, dear. The fact is that Lily and I have actually promised to go round for 10 minutes to see poor Lady Brancaster, who's in very great trouble. Her daughter, quite a well-brought-up girl too, has actually become engaged to be married to a cleric in Shropshire. It is very sad indeed. I don't understand this modern mania for clerics. In my time, we girls saw them, of course, running about the place like rabbits. But we never paid them any notice, I need hardly say. But I am told that country society is quite honeycombed with them. I think it most irreligious. And then, the eldest son has quarreled with his father, and it is said that when they meet at the club, Lord Brancaster always hides himself behind the money article in the Times. However, I think it is quite a common occurrence nowadays, and that they always have to take in extra copies of the Times at all the clubs on St. James's Street. There are so many fathers who won't have anything to do with their sons, and so many sons who won't speak to their fathers. I think myself it is very much to be regretted.
So do I. Fathers have so much to learn from their sons nowadays.
Really, dear? Like what?
The art of living. The only really fine art we've produced in modern times.
You know Lady Brancaster, don't you, dear?
Just slightly. She was at Langton last autumn when we were there.
Well, like all stout women, she looks the very picture of happiness, as you no doubt noticed. But there are many tragedies in her life, besides this affair of the cleric. Her own sister, Mrs. Jekyll, has had a most unhappy life. Through no fault of her own, I'm sorry to say. She ultimately was so broken-hearted, she went into a convent, or was it the operatic stage? I forget which. No, I think it was decorative art needlework she took up. I know she had lost all sense of pleasure in life. And now, I must go, dear, and I will leave Mrs. Cheverly in your charge and call back for her in a quarter of an hour. Or, dear Mrs. Cheverly, you wouldn't mind waiting in the carriage while I'm with Lady Brancaster? As I intended to be a visit of condolence, I shan't stay long.
Oh, I don't mind waiting in the carriage at all, provided there is somebody to look at one.
Well, I hear the cleric is always prowling about.
I'm afraid I'm not fond of girlfriends.
I hope Mrs. Cheverly could stay a few minutes. I'd like to have a conversation with her.
How very thoughtful of you. Believe me, nothing would give me greater pleasure.
No doubt you two have many pleasant reminiscences of your school days to talk over together. Goodbye, dear. Shall we see you at Lady Bowenar's tonight? She has discovered a wonderful new genius. He does nothing at all, I believe. That is a great comfort, is it not?
No, Robert and I will be dining at home by ourselves tonight, and I don't think I'll go out afterwards. Robert, of course, will be in the house, but there's nothing interesting on.
Dining at home by yourselves? Is that quite prudent? Ah, no, I forgot. Your husband is an exception. Mine is the general rule. And nothing ages a woman so fast as having married the general rule.
Wonderful woman, Lady Markby, isn't she? Talks more and says less than anyone I've ever met. She was made to be a public speaker, much more so than her husband, though he's the typical Englishman, always dull and usually violent.
Mrs. Cheverly, I find it right to tell you quite frankly that had I known who you really were last night, I would not have invited you to my house.
Really?
I could not have done so.
I see that after all these years, you have not changed a bit, Gertrude.
I never change.
Then life has taught you nothing.
It has taught me. that a person who is guilty of a dishonest and dishonorable action may be guilty of it a second time and must be shunned.
Would you apply that rule to everyone?
Yes, everyone without exception.
Then I am sorry for you, Gertrude. I am very sorry for you.
You see now, I was sure of it. Any further acquaintance between us during your stay in London is quite impossible.
Do you know, I don't mind your talking morality a bit. Morality is simply the attitude we adopt when we're talking to people whom we personally dislike. You dislike me, I am quite aware of that. And I have always detested you. And yet, I have come here to do you a service.
Like the service you wished to render my husband last night? Thank heavens I saved him from that.
It was you who made him write that insolent letter to me? It was you who made him break his promise?
Yes.
Then you must make it keep it. I give you till tomorrow at noon, no longer. If by then your husband does not solemnly bind himself to help me in this scheme in which I'm interested, then I swear, you are going to be punished.
You are impertinent. What has my husband to do with you? With a woman like you?
In this world, like meets with like. It is because your husband is himself fraudulent and dishonest that we pair so well together. Between you and him, there are chasms. He and I are closer than friends. We are enemies linked together. The same sin binds us.
How dare you class my husband with yourself? How dare you threaten him or me? Leave my house. You are unfit to enter it.
Your house. A house bought with the price of dishonor. A house everything in which is paid for by fraud. Ask him what the origin of his fortune is. Get him to tell you how he sold to a stockbroker a cabinet secret. Learn from him to what you owe your position.
Oh, Robert, it is not true, is it?
Look at him. Can he deny it? Does he dare to?
Go! Go at once! You've done your worst now.
My worst? I am not yet finished with you. With either of you. I give you both till tomorrow at noon. If by then you don't do what I have bid you to do, the whole world shall know the origin of Robert Schilter.
You sold yourself for money? You began your life with fraud? You built up your career on dishonest? Oh, tell me it is not true. Lie to me. Lie to me. Tell me it is not true.
Gertrude, what this woman said is quite true. But listen to me. You don't realize how I was tempted.
No! Don't come near me. Don't touch me. I feel as if you soiled me forever. What a mask you've been wearing all these years. A horrible, painted mask. You sold yourself for money? A common thief or better. You put yourself up to sale to the highest bidder? You were bought in the market. You have lied to the whole world, and you will not lie to me.
Gertrude.
No. Don't speak. Say nothing. Your words bring back horrible memories. Memories of things that made me love you. Memories of words that made me love you. Memories that are now horrible to me. And how I worshipped you. You were to me something apart from common life. Something pure, noble, honest, without stain. The world seemed to me finer because you were in it. Goodness more real because you lived. And now, to think that I made a man like you my ideal. The ideal of my life.
There was your mistake. There was your error. The error all women commit. Why can't you women love us, faults and all? Why must you place us on monstrous pedestals? It is not the perfect, but the imperfect who have need of love. It is when we are wounded by our own hands or by the hands of others that love should come to cure us. Else what use is love at all? All sins, except a sin against itself, love should forgive. All lives, save loveless lives, true love should pardon. Women think they are making ideals of men. What they are making are false idols merely. You made your false idol of me. And I had not the courage to come down, show you my wounds, tell you my weaknesses? I was afraid I might lose your love, as I have lost it now. And so last night, you ruined my life. Yes, ruined it. What this woman asked of me was nothing compared to what she offered to me. She offered security, peace, stability. The sin of my youth, which I thought was dead, rose up before me. Hideous, horrible. Its hands at my throat. I could have killed it forever. Sent it back to its tomb. You prevented me. And now what is there before me? But public disgrace, ruin, terrible shame, the mockery of the world, a lonely, dishonorable life. Let women no more make ideals of men. Let them not put them on altars and bow down before them. Or they may ruin other lives as completely as you who I have so wildly loved, have ruined mine.
You see, Phipps, what is fashionable is what one wears oneself. What is unfashionable is what others wear. Yes. Just as vulgarity is the conduct of other people. Yes, my lord. And falsehoods the truths of other people. Yes, my lord. Other people are quite dreadful. The only possible society is oneself. Yes, my lord. To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. Yes, my lord. Phipps, not quite so sure I like this buttonhole. Makes me look too old. Makes me look almost in the prime of life, eh?
I haven't observed any alteration in your lordship's appearance.
You haven't?
No.
You're not so sure. For the future, a more trivial buttonhole on Thursday evenings?
Yes, my lord. I will speak to the florist. She has had a death in the family lately, which perhaps accounts for the lack of triviality your lordship complains of in your buttonhole.
Extraordinary thing about the lower classes in England. They seem to be always losing their relations.
Oh, they are very fortunate in that respect.
Any letters, Phipps?
3, my lord.
I want my cab round in 20 minutes.
Certainly, my lord.
Oh, and Phipps, when did this letter arrive?
It was brought by hand just before your lordship went to the club.
That would do, Phipps. Lady Shiltern's handwriting on Lady Shiltern's pink notepaper. I wonder what she has got to say. I thought Robert was to write. I want you. I trust you. I am coming to you. Gertrude. I want you. I trust you. I am coming to you. Then she has found out everything. Oh, poor woman. Poor woman. Damn it, what an hour to call. It's 10 o'clock. I shall have to give up going to the Berkshires. I will make her stand by her husband. That is the only thing for her to do. What an hour to call. 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. Let's tell Phipps I'm not into anyone else.
Lord Caversham.
Why will that father of mine always appear at the wrong moment? Some extraordinary mistake in nature, I suppose. Delighted to see you, Father.
Take my hat.
Is it worthwhile?
Of course it is worthwhile, sir. Which is the most comfortable chair?
That one, Father. It is the one I use myself when I have guests.
Thank you. No draft, I hope, in this room?
No, Father.
Glad to hear it. I can't stand drafts. There should be no drafts at home.
Good many breezes, Father.
Hey, sir, what do you mean? Never mind. I want to have a serious conversation with you, sir.
My dear Father, at this hour...
What is your objection to the hour? It's only 10 o'clock. I think it's an admirable hour.
My dear Father, I am very sorry, but tonight is just not my day for talking seriously. I'm very sorry, but today is just not my day. What do you mean, sir?
During the season, Father, I only talk seriously from 4 to 7. First Tuesday of every month.
Well, sir, make it Tuesday, make it Tuesday. But it is after 7, Father. And my doctor tells me I must not have any serious conversations after 7. Well, sir, that doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't. I want to talk to you seriously. You have got to get married, and at once. Why? When I was your age, I had been an inconsolable widower for 3 months, and already paying my dresses to your admirable mother. Damn it, sir, it is your duty to get married. You can't always be living for pleasure. Every man in position is married nowadays. Bachelors, they're not fashionable anymore. Too much is known about them. They're a damaged lot. Why, look at your friend Robert Chiltern. Look where he has gone to. By probity, hard work, and a sensible marriage with a good woman. Why don't you imitate him, sir?
I think I shall, Father.
I wish you would, sir. At the present, I make your mother's life miserable on your account. You're heartless, sir. Very heartless.
I hope not, Father.
And it is time for you to get married. You are 34 years of age.
Yes, Father, but I only admit to 32. 31 and a half when I have a good buttonhole. This buttonhole is not trivial enough.
I tell you, sir, you are 34. Besides, there's a draft in this room, which makes your conduct worse. Why did you tell me there's no draft? I feel draft. I feel it distinctly.
So do I, Father. It is a dreadful draft.
How about you come around tomorrow morning and we can talk over anything you like? No, sir. I have called tonight for a definite purpose, and I'm going to see it through at all costs to my health or yours. Put down my hat.
Yes, Father. There is a dreadful draft in here. Let us go into another room.
Is there a fire in the smoking room?
Yes, my lord.
Let us go in there, Father. Your sneezes are quite heart-rending.
I suppose I have the right to sneeze when I choose, sir.
Yes, Father. I was merely expressing sympathy.
Damn sympathy. There's too much of that going around nowadays.
Yes, Father. If there was less sympathy in the world, there would be less trouble in the world, right?
That is a paradox, sir. I hate paradoxes.
But so do I, Father. Everybody one meets nowadays is a paradox. It is a great bore. It makes society so obvious.
Do you really understand what you say, sir?
Yes, if I listen attentively.
Listen attentively, conceited young puppy. This.
There is a lady coming to see me tonight on very particular business. I want you to show her to the drawing room when she arrives. Do you understand?
Yes, my lord.
This. It is a matter of the gravest importance.
I understand.
No one else is to be admitted under any circumstances.
I understand.
That is probably the lady. I'll see her myself.
Am I to wait attendance on you, sir?
Excuse me, Father, in a moment. Phipps, remember my instructions. Into that room.
Yes, ma'am.
Is Lord Goring not here? I was told he was at home.
His lordship is engaged at present with Lord Caversham, madam.
How very filial.
His lordship told me to ask you to be kind enough to wait for him in the drawing room. His lordship will come to you there.
Lord Goring expects me.
Yes, madam.
Are you quite sure?
His lordship told me that if a lady called, I was to ask her to wait for him in the drawing room. His lordship's directions on the matter were extremely respectful.
How thoughtful of him. Oh, how dreary a bachelor's drawing room always looks. I shall have to alter all of this. Oh, no. I don't care for that lamp. Light some candles. I hope the candles have very becoming shades.
We haven't had any complaints about them yet.
I wonder what woman he is waiting for. It would be delightful to catch him. Men always look so silly when they are caught, and they are always getting caught. Oh, what a very interesting room. I wonder what his correspondence is like. Oh, what an uninteresting correspondence. Bills and cards, debts and dowagers. Who on earth writes to him on pink paper? It's very silly to write on pink paper. It looks like the beginning of a middle-class romance. I know that handwriting. That's Gertrude Chilton's. I remember it perfectly. The 10 Commandments in every stroke of the pen and the moral law all over the page. I wonder what Gertrude is writing to him about. Something horrid about me, I suppose. Oh, I detest that woman. I want you, I trust you, I'm coming to you. Gertrude. I want you, I trust you, I'm coming.
The candles in the drawing room are lit, Madam.
Thank you.
I trust you will like them. They're the best we have. They're the same as his lordship uses when he dresses himself for dinner.
And I am sure they will be perfectly right.
Thank you, Madam.
I think you should get married tomorrow, and I have the perfect woman in mind just for you.
Father, if I am to get married, you will at least let me choose the time, the place, and the person, particularly the person.
Certainly not, sir. You would make a horrible choice. It is I who should be consulted, not you. There's property at stake. I tell you, marriage is not a thing for affection. That comes later on in married life.
Yes, affection comes when people are thoroughly dissatisfied with each other, right, Father?
Certainly, sir. I mean, certainly not, sir. You're talking very foolishly tonight. I tell you, marriage is a thing for common sense.
But women who have common sense are so curiously plain, Father. I only speak from hearsay, of course.
No woman, pretty or plain, has any common sense at all. That is a privilege for our sex.
Yes, and we men are so self-sacrificing that we never use it, do we, Father?
I use it, sir. I use nothing else.
So my mother tells me.
It is the key to your mother's happiness, sir. You're heartless, very heartless.
I hope not, Father.
My dear Arthur, what a piece of good luck meeting you on the doorstep. Your servant just told me you were not at home. How extraordinary.
The fact is, Robert, I am horribly busy tonight. I gave orders I was not home to anyone. My father had a comparatively cold reception. He complained of a draft the whole time.
Ah, but you must be home to me, Arthur. You are my best friend. Perhaps by tomorrow, you'll be my only friend. My wife has discovered everything.
I guessed as much.
Really? How?
Oh, merely by something in the expression of your face as you walked in. Who told her?
Mrs. Cheveley. And now the woman I love knows that I began my career with an act of low dishonesty. That I built up my life upon sands of shame. That I sold, like a common huckster, the secret that had been entrusted to me as a man of honor. Arthur, I am parched with thirst. May I ring for something? Some hop and seltzer?
Certainly. Let me.
Thanks. I don't know what to do, Arthur. I don't know what to do. And you are my only friend. What a friend you are. The one friend I can trust. I can trust you absolutely, can't I?
Of course, Robert. Oh, Phipps, would you bring some hockey seltzer?
Yes, my lord.
And Phipps, Robert, would you mind if I gave some instructions to my servant?
Certainly.
Phipps, when that lady arrives, tell her that I am not home, that I have been suddenly called out of town.
The lady is in that room, my lord. You told me to put her in there.
You did perfectly all right. What a mess I am in. No? I think I shall get through it. I'll give her a lecture through the door. Awkward thing to manage, though.
Arthur, tell me what I should do. My life seems to have crumbled about me. I'm a ship without a rudder, and a night without a star.
Robert, you love your wife, don't you?
I love her more than anything in the world. I used to think ambition the great thing. It is not. Love is the great thing in the world. There's nothing but love. And I love her. But I'm defamed in her eyes. I'm ignoble in her eyes. There's a wide gulf between us now. She's found me out, Arthur. She's found me out.
Has she never in her life done some folly, some indiscretion that she should not forgive your sin?
My wife? Never. She does not know what weakness or temptation is. I'm of clay, like other men. She stands apart as good women do. Pitiless in her perfection, cold, and stern and without mercy. But I love her, Arthur. I was brutal to her this evening. But I suppose when sinners talk to saints, they are brutal always. I said things that were hideously true. On my side. From my standpoint. From the standpoint of man. But let us not speak.
Robert, your wife will forgive you. Perhaps she is forgiving you at this very moment. She loves you, Robert. Why should she not forgive?
God grant it. God grant it. But there's something more I have to tell you.
Packing seltzer, sir.
Thank you.
Robert, is your carriage here?
No, I walked from the club.
Robert will take my cab.
Yes, my lord.
Robert, I hope you don't mind my sending you away like this.
Arthur, you must let me stay for 5 minutes. I've made up my mind what I'm going to do tonight in the house. The debate on the Arsenal Canal begins at 11. What is that?
Nothing.
I heard a chair fall in the next room. Someone has been listening.
No, there's no one there.
There is someone. There are lights in that room. And the door's ajar. Someone has been listening to every secret of my life. What does this mean, Arthur?
Robert, you're excited, unnerved. Sit down, Robert. There's no one in that room.
Do you give me your word that there's no one there?
Yes.
Your word of honor?
Yes.
Arthur, you must let me see for myself.
No.
If there's no one there, why should I not go into that room? Arthur, you must let me go in and satisfy myself. Let me know that no eavesdropper has heard my life's secret. Arthur, you don't realize what I'm going through.
Robert, I have told you that there is no one in that room. That is enough.
It is not enough. I insist on going to that room. You've told me that there is no one there, so what reason can you have for refusing me?
For God's sake, don't! There is someone there. Someone whom you must not see.
I thought so.
I forbid you to enter that room.
Stand back. My life's at stake. I don't care who is there. I will know who it is to whom I've told my secret and my shame.
Dear God! His own wife!
What explanation have you to give me for the presence of that woman here?
Robert, I swear to you on my honor, that woman is stainless and guiltless of all offense towards you.
She is a vile, an infamous thing.
Don't say that, Robert. It was for your sake she came here. It was to try and save you she came here, Robert. She loves you, Robert, and no one else.
You are mad. What have I to do with her intrigues into you? Let her remain your mistress. You are well suited to each other. She, corrupt and shameful. You, false as a friend, treacherous as an enemy even.
Robert, it is not true. Before heaven, it is not true. In her presence and in yours, I will explain all.
Let me pass, sir. You've lied enough upon your word of honor.
Good evening, Lord Goring.
Mrs. Cheveley? May I ask what you were doing in my drawing room?
Oh, merely listening. I have a perfect passion for listening through keyholes. One always hears such wonderful things through them.
Doesn't that sound rather like tempting Providence?
Oh, surely Providence can resist temptation by this time.
I am glad you have called. I'm going to give you some good advice.
Oh, pray don't. One should never give a woman anything she can't wear in the evening.
I see you are quite as willful as you used to be.
Far more. I've greatly improved. I've had more experience.
Too much experience is a dangerous thing, Mrs. Cheveley. Pray, have a cigarette. Half the pretty women in London smoke cigarettes. Personally, I prefer the other half.
Thanks. I never smoke. My dressmaker wouldn't like it. And a woman's first duty in life is to her dressmaker, isn't it? But the second duty is no one has as yet discovered.
You have come here to sell me Robert Shiltern's letter, haven't you?
To offer it to you on conditions. How did you guess that?
Because you haven't mentioned the subject. Have you got it on you?
Oh no, a well-made dress has no pockets.
What is your price for it?
How absurdly English you are. The English think that a checkbook can solve every problem in life. My dear Arthur, I have very much more money than you have, and quite as much as Robert Shilton has got a hold of. It's not money that I want.
Then what do you want, Mrs. Cheveley?
Why don't you call me Laura?
I don't like the name.
You used to adore it.
Yes, that's why.
Arthur, you loved me once.
Yes.
And you asked me to be your wife.
That was the natural result of my loving you.
And you threw me over because you saw, or said you saw, poor old Lord Mortlake trying to have a violent flirtation with me outside the conservatory at Tenby.
I'm under the impression that that matter was settled with you by my lawyer, dictated on your terms.
At the time, I was poor, and you were rich.
Exactly. That's why you pretended to love me.
Poor old Lord Mortlake, who only ever had two topics of conversation, his gout and his wife. I never could figure out which of the two he was talking about. He used the most dreadful language about both of them. Well, you were silly, Arthur. Why, Lord Mortlake was never anything more to me than an amusement. One of those utterly tedious amusements one only finds at an English country house on an English country Sunday. And I don't think anyone at all morally responsible for anything he or she does at an English country house.
Yes, I know lots of people think that.
Arthur, I loved you.
My dear Mrs. Shepley, you have always been far too clever to know anything about love.
I did love you, and you loved me. You know you loved me. And love is a wonderful thing. I suppose that when a man has once loved a woman, he will do anything in the world for her, except continue to love her.
Yes, except that.
I am tired of living abroad. I want to come back to London. I want to have a charming house here. I want to have a salon. Besides, I have arrived at the romantic stage. When I saw you last night at the Shiltons, I knew that you were the only person I've ever cared for. If I ever cared for anybody, Arthur. And so, on the morning of the day you marry me, I will give you Robert Shilton's letter. That is my offer. I will give it to you now if you promise to marry me.
Now?
Tomorrow.
Are you really serious?
Yes, quite serious.
I should make you a very bad husband.
Oh, I don't mind bad husbands. I've had two of them. They amused me immensely.
You mean you amused yourself immensely, don't you?
What do you know about my married life?
Nothing, but I can read it like a book.
What book?
The Book of Numbers.
Do you think it is quite charming of you to be so rude to a woman in your own house?
In the case of very fascinating women, Mrs. Shepherd, sex is a challenge, not a defense.
I suppose that was meant for a compliment. My dear Arthur, women are never disarmed by compliments. Men always are. That is the difference between the two sexes.
Women are never disarmed by anything, as far as I can tell.
Then you are going to allow your greatest friend, Robert Shilton, to be ruined, rather than marry someone who really still has considerable attractions left. I thought you would have risen to some great height of self-sacrifice, Arthur. I think you should. And the rest of your life you could spend in contemplating your own perfections.
Oh, I do that as it is. Your self-sacrifice is a thing that should be put down by law. It is so demoralizing to the one for whom one helps. They always go to the bad.
As if anything could demoralize Robert Shilton. You seem to forget I know his real character.
You do not know his true character. What you know of him was an act of folly, done in his youth. Shameful, I admit. Dishonorable, I admit. Unworthy of him, I admit. And therefore not his true character.
How you men stand up for each other.
How you women war against each other.
I only war against one woman, against Gertrude Shilton. I hate her, and I hate her now more than ever.
Because, I suppose, you have introduced a real tragedy into her life.
Oh, there is only one real tragedy in a woman's life, that her past is always her lover, and her future invariably her husband.
Lady Shilton knows nothing of the kind of life to which you are alluding.
Well, I suppose this romantic interview may be regarded as at an end. You admit it was romantic, don't you? For the privilege of being your wife, I was ready to surrender a great prize, the climax of my diplomatic career. You decline. Very well. If Robert Shilton doesn't uphold my Argentine scheme, I expose him. Voila, tout.
You mustn't do that. It would be horrible, vile, infamous!
Oh, don't use big words. They mean so little. It is a commercial transaction, that is all. There's no use in mixing up sentimentality in it. I offered to sell Robert Chilton a certain thing. If he will not pay me my price, he will have to pay the world a greater price. There's nothing more to be said. I must go now. Won't you shake hands?
With you? No. What you did may pass as a loathsome commercial transaction of a loathsome commercial age. But you seem to have forgotten that you came here tonight to speak of love. You, whose lips desecrated the word love. You, to whom the thing is a book closely sealed, went this afternoon to the house of one of the most noble and gentle women in all London to degrade her husband in her eyes, to try and kill his love for her, to put poison in her heart and bitterness in her life. That I cannot forgive you. That was horrible.
Arthur,
For that there can be no forgiveness.
Arthur, you are unjust to me. Believe me, you are unjust to me. I called with Lady Markby simply to inquire whether a diamond brooch of mine had been found. That was the origin of the whole thing. If you don't believe me, ask Lady Markby. She will tell you it's all true. The scene that occurred happened after Lady Markby left, and was really quite forced on me by Gertrude's rudeness and sneers. I called, a little out of malice, I suppose, but really to ask whether a diamond brooch might have been found. That was the origin of the whole thing.
A diamond snake brooch with a ruby.
Yes. How did you know?
Because it is found. In point of fact, I found it myself. I stupidly forgot to tell anybody about it as I was leaving. This is it, isn't it?
Yes, I'm so glad to get it back. It was a present.
Won't you wear it?
Certainly, if you pin it in. Why do you put it on as a bracelet? I didn't know it could be worn as a bracelet.
Really?
No. But it looks very well on me as a bracelet, don't you think?
Yes. Much better than when I saw it last.
When did you see it last?
On my cousin, Lady Berkshire, from whom you stole it.
What do you mean?
I mean that you stole that ornament from my cousin Mary Berkshire, to whom I gave it as a wedding present. Suspicion fell on a wretched servant, who was sent away in disgrace. Last night, I recognized the brooch, and determined to say nothing about it till I had found the thief. Well, I have found the thief now, and heard her own confession.
It is not true.
You know you are lying. Why, thief is written across your face at this very moment.
I will deny the whole affair from beginning to end. I will say I have never seen this wretched thing, that it has never been in my possession.
Mrs. Chevalier, the drawback of stealing a thing is that one never knows how wonderful the thing is that one steals. You see, you can't undo that bracelet unless you know where the spring is. And I see you don't know where that spring is. It's rather difficult to find.
You brute. You coward.
Oh, don't use big words. They mean so little.
What are you going to do?
I am going to ring for my servant. He's an admirable servant. Comes in the moment one calls for him. He is going to fetch the police.
The police? What for?
Tomorrow the Berkshires will prosecute you.
Oh, don't do that. Please don't do that. I will do anything. Anything in the world you want.
Give me Robert Chiltern's letter.
Stop. You must give me time to think.
Give me Robert Chiltern's letter.
I haven't got it with me. I will give it to you tomorrow.
You know you are lying. Give it to me at once. This is it?
Yes.
So well-dressed a woman, Mrs. Chevalier. You have moments of admirable common sense. I congratulate you.
Will you get me a glass of water?
Certainly.
Thank you. I'm never going to try to harm Robert Chiltern again.
Fortunately, you have not the chance, Mrs. Chevalier.
Well, even if I had, I wouldn't. On the contrary, I'm going to render him a great service.
I am trying to hear it. It is a reformation.
Yes, I can't bear so upright a gentleman, so honorable an English gentleman, being so shamefully deceived. And so, I find that Gertrude Chiltern's dying speech and confession has strayed into my pocket.
What do you mean?
I mean that I'm going to send Robert Chiltern this love letter his wife wrote to you last night.
Love letters?
I want you. I trust you. I'm coming to you, Gertrude.
Must you always be thieving? Give me back that letter. I'll take it from you by force. You shall not leave my room until I've got it.
Lord Goring merely rang that you should see me out. Good night, Lord Goring.
It is a great nuisance. I can't find anybody in this house to talk to, and I am full of interesting ideas.
Sir Robert is still at the Foreign Office, my lord.
Lady Chiltern not down yet?
Her ladyship has not yet left her room. Miss Shelton has just come in from riding.
Ah, that is something.
Lord Caversham has been waiting some time in the library for Sir Robert. I told him your lordship was here.
Would you kindly tell him I've gone?
I shall do so, my lord.
Really, I don't want to see my father for 3 days' money. There's a great deal too much excitement for any son. Hope to goodness he doesn't come up. Fathers should be neither seen nor heard. That is the only proper basis for family life. Mothers are different. Mothers are darlings.
Well, sir. What are you doing here? Wasting your time as usual, I suppose.
Father, when one pays a visit, it is to waste other people's time, not one's own.
Have you thought over what we discussed last night?
I've been thinking of nothing else.
Engaged to be married yet?
Not yet, but I hope to be before lunchtime.
You can have till dinner time if it is of any convenience to you.
Thanks, but I'd sooner be engaged before lunchtime.
Never tell when you're serious or not.
Neither can I, Father.
Have you read the Times this morning?
No, I only ever read the Morning Post. What does it say?
You mean to tell me you've not read the Times leading article on your friend Robert Chiltern?
Great heavens, no. What does it say?
What should it say, sir? Everything complimentary, of course. They say Robert Chiltern's speech last night was one of the most brilliant pieces ever delivered in the House since Canning.
Never heard of Canning. Never wanted to. But did Robert uphold the scheme?
Uphold it, sir? Why, how little you know him. He denounced it roundly, and the whole system of modern political finance. This is the turning point of his career, as the Time points out. You should read this, sir. Robert Chiltern, most rising of our statesmen, brilliant orator, unblemished career, well-known integrity of character, noble contrast to the lax morality so commonly found in foreign politicians. They'll never say that of you, sir.
I sincerely hope not, Father. But I'm delighted at what you tell me about Robert. It shows he has got pluck.
Pluck? Sir, he's got more than pluck. He's got genius.
I prefer pluck, Father. It is not so common nowadays as genius is.
I wish you would go into Parliament.
Father, only people who look dull ever get into the House of Commons. And only people who are dull ever succeed there.
Why don't you try and do something useful with your life?
I'm far too young.
I hate this affectation of the youth. It's so prevalent nowadays.
Youth isn't an affectation. Youth is an art.
Why don't you propose to that pretty Miss Chiltern?
I'm of a very nervous disposition, especially in the morning.
I don't suppose there's any chance of her accepting you.
I don't know how the betting stands today.
If she did, she would be the prettiest fool in England.
That is exactly what I should like to marry. A thoroughly sensible wife would reduce me to a condition of absolute idiocy in less than 6 months.
You don't deserve her, sir.
Father, if we men married the women we deserved, we should have a very bad time.
Oh, how do you do, Lord Caversham?
I hope Lady Caversham is quite well.
Oh, Lady Caversham is as usual, dear.
Good morning, Miss Mabel.
And Lady Caversham's bonnets, are they at all better?
Oh, I'm so sorry to say, Jim, but they've had a serious relapse.
Good morning, Miss Mabel.
I hope an operation will not be necessary.
If it is, we shall have to give Lady Caversham a narcotic. Otherwise, she would never consent to have a feather touch.
Good morning, Miss Mabel.
Oh, you are here? Of course, you understand that after your breaking your appointment, I am never going to speak to you again.
Don't say that. You're the one person in London I really like to have to listen to me.
Lord Goring, I never believe a single word either you or I say to each other.
You are quite right, my dear. Quite right. I mean, as far as he is concerned.
Do you think you could possibly make your son behave a little bit better occasionally? Just for a change. People who don't keep their appointments in the park are horrid.
Detestable.
Well, I'm glad you admit it, but I wish you wouldn't look so pleased about it.
I can't help it. I always look pleased when I'm with you.
Then I suppose it is my duty to remain with you.
Of course it is.
Well, my duty is a thing I never do, on principle. It always depresses me. So, I'm afraid I must leave you.
Oh, Mabel, do stop a while. I have something very particular to say to you.
Oh, is it a proposal?
Well, yes, it is. I'm bound to say it is.
I'm so glad. That makes the second today.
The second today? What conceited ass has been impertinent enough to propose to you before I had proposed to you?
Well, Tommy Trafford, of course. It is one of Tommy's days for proposing. Tommy always proposes on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
You didn't accept him, I hope.
Oh, I make it a rule never to accept Tommy. That is why he goes on proposing. Of course, as you didn't show this morning, I very nearly said yes. It would have been an excellent lesson to both him and you if I had. It would have taught you both better manners.
Oh, bother Tommy Trafford. Tommy is a silly little ass. I love you.
I know. And I think you might have mentioned it before. I'm sure I've given you heaps of opportunities.
Mabel, do be serious. Please be serious.
Ah, that is the sort of thing a man always says to a girl before he has been married to her. He never says it afterwards.
Mabel, I have told you that I love you. Can't you love me a little in return?
You silly Arthur. If you knew anything about anything, which you don't, you would know that I adore you. Everyone in London knows it except you. It is a public scandal the way I adore you. I have been going about the last 6 months telling the whole of society that I adore you.
Do you know, I was awfully afraid of being refused.
Ah, but you have not been refused yet by anybody, have you, Arthur? I can't imagine anyone refusing you.
Not nearly good enough for you, Mabel.
I'm so glad, darling. I was afraid you were.
And I'm a little over 30.
Dear, you look weeks younger than that.
How nice of you to say. And it is only fair that I admit I'm fearfully extravagant.
Well, so am I, Arthur. So we're sure to agree. Now, I must go and see Gertrude.
Must you really?
Yes.
Then do tell her that I want to see her. I've something to say to her very particularly. I've been waiting all morning to see either her or Robert.
Do you mean you didn't come here expressly to propose to me?
No. That was a flash of genius.
You're first.
My last.
I'm so glad. Now don't stir. I'll be back in 5 minutes. And don't fall into any temptations while I'm away.
My dear Mabel, while you are gone, there are none. Makes me horribly dependent on you.
Good morning, dear. How pretty you are looking. How pale you are looking, Gertrude. It is most becoming. Good morning, Lord Goring.
Good morning, Lady Shelton.
I will be in the conservatory under the second palm tree on the left.
Second to the left.
The usual palm tree.
Lady Shelter, I have some very good news to tell you. Last night, Mrs. Chevalier gave me up Robert's letter, and I destroyed it. Robert is safe.
Safe. Oh, I'm so glad of it. You're such a good friend to him. To us.
And now, only one person could be said to be in any danger.
Who is that?
Yourself.
I? In danger? What do you mean?
Danger is too great a word, but I must admit I've some terrible news to tell you that may distress you, that terribly distresses me. Last night, Mrs. Cheveley got possession of your letter.
Well, what use is it to her? Why should she not have it?
I must be frank. Mrs. Cheveley plans to put a certain construction on that letter and send it to your husband.
But what construction could she put on it? Oh, not that. If I, in trouble and wanting your help, trusting you, propose to come to you that you may advise me, assist me, there are women as horrible as that? And she proposes to send it to my husband? Tell me what happened.
Mrs. Cheveley was concealed in a room adjoining my library. I thought it was you waiting for me in that room. Robert came in unexpectedly. He forced his way in and he discovered her. We had a terrible scene. I still thought it was you. He left me in anger. At the end of everything, Mrs. Cheveley stole your letter. How? I don't know.
What hour did this happen?
At 10:30. And now I propose that we tell Robert the whole thing.
You want me to tell Robert that it was not Mrs. Cheveley whom you expected last night, but myself? That it was I whom you thought was concealed in your rooms at 10:30 at night? You want me to tell him that?
Yes, I think it better that he know the exact truth.
I couldn't. I couldn't.
May I do it?
No! The letter must be intercepted. That is all. But how can I do it? Letters arrive to him at every moment of the day. His secretaries open them and hand them to him. Tell me what to do.
You said his secretaries opened his letters?
Yes?
Who was with him today? Mr. Trafford, isn't it?
No, Mr. Montfort, I think.
You can trust him.
How do I know?
He would do what you asked of him, wouldn't he?
I suppose so.
And your letter was on pink paper. He could recognize it by the color.
I think so.
Is he in the house now?
Yes.
And I would go and see him myself and tell him that a certain letter written on pink paper is to be forwarded to Robert today, and that it must not reach him at all costs.
Lady Shilton, Robert is coming up the stairs now. He has the letter in his hand. It has already reached him.
You have saved his life, but what have you done with mine?
I want you. I trust you. I'm coming to you. Gertrude. Is this true? Do you want me and trust me?
Yes.
Why did you not add you love me?
Because I loved you, Robert.
Oh, Gertrude, you don't know what I feel. When Montfort passed me your letter across the table, I didn't care what punishment or disgrace was in store for me. I only thought you loved me still.
There's no disgrace in store for you, nor any public shame. Mrs. Cheveley has handed over to Lord Goring the document that was in her possession, and he has destroyed it.
Are you sure of this, Gertrude?
Yes, he's just told me.
Then I'm safe. For 2 days I have been in terror. I'm safe now. Is Arthur still here?
Yes, he's in the conservatory.
I'm so glad now I made that speech last night in the house.
Public honor has been the result.
I think so. I fear so almost. For although I am safe from detection, although every proof against me is destroyed, I suppose, Gertrude, I suppose I should retire from public life?
Yes, Robert. You should do that. It is your duty to do that.
It is much to surrender.
No, it is much to gain.
And you would have no regrets?
None, Robert.
And your ambition for me? You used to be ambitious for me.
My ambition for you, I have none of that now. It is your ambition that led you astray. Let us not speak of ambition.
Arthur, I have to thank you for what you've done for me. I don't know how I can thank you.
My dear Robert, at the present moment, in the conservatory, under the usual palm tree, in the conservatory,
Lord Caversham,
that father of mine really makes a habit of turning up the wrong end. It is very heartless of him. Very heartless indeed.
Good morning, Lady Chiltern. Chiltern, warmest congratulations to you on your brilliant speech last night. I just left the Prime Minister, and you are to have the vacant seat in the cabinet.
A seat in the cabinet?
Yes. Here is the letter.
A seat in the cabinet?
Certainly. Well deserved too. You have everything we are looking for. High principles, high character, high moral tone. Everything you have not got, sir, and never will have.
I don't like principles, Father. I prefer prejudices.
I cannot accept this offer, Lord Caversham. I have made up my mind to decline it.
Decline it?
It is my intention to retire at once from public life.
Decline a seat in the cabinet? Retire from political life? I've never heard such damn nonsense my entire existence. I beg your pardon, Lady Chiltern. Chiltern, I beg your pardon. Don't grin like that, sir.
No, Father.
Lady Chiltern, you're a sensible woman. The most sensible woman in London. The most sensible woman I know. Would you kindly prevent your husband from doing such... Would you do that, Lady Chiltern?
Lord Caversham, I think my husband is right in his determination. I approve of it.
You approve of it? Good heavens!
I admire him for it. I've never admired him so much before. You will write a letter now to the Prime Minister declining the offer.
I suppose I had better write at once. I'll ask you to excuse me for a moment, Lord Caversham.
I may come with you, may I not, Robert?
Yes, sir.
What is wrong with this family? Something is wrong here, eh? Idiocy, hereditary. Both of them too, husband and wife. It is sad, it's very sad indeed. They're not even an old family. I can't understand it.
It is not idiocy, Father, I assure you.
Then what is it, sir?
It is what is called, nowadays, a high moral tone. That is all.
I hate these newfangled names. It's the same thing we called idiocy 50 years ago. I shan't stay here any longer.
My dear Father, just wait a little while. In the conservatory, under the right, the third palm tree to the right, or the second to the left. In the conservatory, there is someone I should like you to talk to me. To talk to you.
What about, sir?
About me, Father.
Not a subject of much eloquence as possible.
The lady is like me, Father. She doesn't care much for eloquence in others. She thinks it rather loud. Lady Chiltern, why are you playing Mrs. Cheveley's cards?
I don't understand you.
Mrs. Cheveley made an attempt to ruin your husband, either to drive him from public life or to make him adopt a dishonorable position. Why should you now do him the harm Mrs. Cheveley tried to do and failed?
Lord Goring.
Lady Chiltern, allow me. Last night, you wrote me a beautiful, womanly letter, in which you said you trusted me and wanted my help. Now is the moment when you really need my help. Do you want to kill Robert's love for you? What sort of existence will he have? You are to take from him the fruits of his ambition, to take him from the splendor of a great political career. It is not. A woman's life is of less value than a man's. Women are meant to judge us. Not meant to judge us, but to forgive us when we need forgiveness. Pardon, not punishment, is their mission. Women's lives revolve in curves of emotion. It is upon lines of intellect that a man's life progresses. Don't make any terrible mistake, Lady Chiltern.
But it is Robert who wishes to retire from public life. He was the first to say so, but he feels it is his duty.
Robert would do anything. Wreck his whole career, as he is on the brink of doing now. Rather than lose your love, he would make for you a great sacrifice. Take my advice and do not accept a sacrifice so great. He has been punished enough.
We have both been punished. I set him up too high.
Do not for that reason set him down now too low.
Gertrude, here's the draft of my letter. Shall I read it to you?
Let me see it.
What are you doing?
A man's life is of more value than a woman's. It has larger issues, wider scopes, greater ambitions. Our lives revolve in curves of emotions, as upon lines of intellect that a man's life progresses. I've just learnt this, and much else with it from Lord Goring.
Gertrude.
I forgive. That is how women help the world.
Well, Arthur, it seems that I am always to be in your debt.
No, Robert. Your debt is to Lady Chiltern, not to me.
I owe you much. And now tell me what you're going to ask me just now as Lord Caversham came in.
Robert, you are your sister's guardian. I want your consent to my marriage with her.
I'm so glad of it. I'm so glad of it.
Thanks so much.
My sister to be your wife?
Yes.
Arthur, I'm very sorry, but the thing is quite out of the question. I have to think of Mabel's future happiness, and I don't think her happiness will be safe in your hands. I cannot have her sacrificed.
Sacrificed?
Yes, utterly sacrificed. Loveless marriages are horrible.
But I love Mabel. No other woman has any place in my life.
Robert, if they love each other, why should they not be married?
Arthur cannot bring Mabel the love that she deserves.
What reason have you for saying that?
Do you really require me to tell you?
Certainly I do.
When I called on you yesterday evening, I found Mrs. Cheveley concealed in your rooms. It was between 10 and 11 o'clock at night. I don't wish to say anything more. I cannot give my sister's life into your hands.
I have nothing more to say.
Robert, it was not Mrs. Cheveley whom Lord Goring expected last night.
Not Mrs. Cheveley? Who was it then?
Lady Chiltern.
It was your own wife. Yesterday afternoon, Lord Goring told me that if ever I was in trouble, I could come to him for help, as he was her oldest and best friend. Later on, after that terrible scene in this room, I wrote to him, telling him that I trusted him, that I had need of him, and that I was coming to him for help and advice. I did not go to Lord Goring's after all. Mrs. Cheveley went. She found my letter and stole it, and sent it to you anonymously, so that you might think. I cannot tell you what she wished you to think.
Arthur, you can go to Mabel, and you have my best wishes.
Well, really, I think I should have my own letter back now.
No, you shall have Mabel.
I hope she hasn't changed her mind. It's 20 minutes since I saw her last.
Lord Goring, I think your father's conversation much more improving than yours. I'm only going to talk to Lord Caversham from now on, and always under the usual palm tree.
Darling. What? What does this mean, sir? You don't mean to tell me that this pretty charming young lady has been so foolish as to accept you?
Certainly I do, Father, and Chiltern's been wise enough to accept the seat in the cabinet.
Thank God. Warmest congratulations to you, Chiltern. If the country doesn't go to liberals or dogs, we'll see you Prime Minister someday.
Lunch is on the table, my lady.
You'll stop to luncheon, Lord Caversham, won't you?
With pleasure, dear. Afterward, Chiltern, I'll drive you down to Downing Street. You have a huge future ahead of you. Huge. I wish I could say the same for you, sir, but your career will have to be entirely domestic.
I prefer a domestic father.
And if you don't make this charming young lady an ideal husband, I'll cut you off with the shilling.
An ideal husband? Oh, I don't think I should like that. It sounds like something in the next world.
Well then, what do you want him to be then, dear?
He can be what he chooses. All I want is to be, a real wife to him.
Upon my word, there's a great deal of common sense in that, Lady Shilton.